will be a great thing for New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you. I call the Honourable Member Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And just to follow on from the end of Nikki Kay's speech there, I think everyone in this House recognises the incredible contribution that Sir Paul Callaghan made to science in New Zealand, made to innovation in New Zealand. He was a person who drew together the work of the public and private sector, perhaps in a way that few other New Zealanders have done. He was a man with a tremendous vision for what this country could be, the way that it could bring together its innovation, its talent, its environment, and I think it's something that all New Zealanders should aspire to. This particular piece of legislation the Labour Party is supporting, but we do so because we have the hope that the kind of vision that Sir Paul Callaghan had could be enhanced by an institute like Callaghan Innovation. However, where we stand today, I have to say I'm doubtful about that, Mr Speaker, given the model that's been placed in front of us by the government. Everything about this piece of legislation, everything about the process that it's gone through, with all due respect to the committee, it was a rushed process. Everything about the way that the advisory board's been set up or not set up, all of those things points to muddled, confused and ad hoc thinking around research and development in New Zealand. And that is what we have seen consistently from day one from this government, is muddled, confused and ad hoc thinking around research and science. And Mr Speaker, we need research and science in this country to be working well in a coordinated way, in an innovative way, if we are going to see our economy grow in a sustainable fashion. And everything I see in this bill points to the fact that the government still doesn't get that, still hasn't grasped the fact that it actually needs to take more than just one-off decisions. It needs to have a greater plan for the way research and science will work in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, I've got 2 or 3 specific concerns about this bill that I raised in the committee stages that I still don't feel have been resolved. The first of those is around the question of the functions of Callaghan Innovation and the question of the allocation and administering of funding. Now, Mr Joyce in his speech just now tried to reassure us that that won't be about contestable funding so much. Well, actually, it doesn't say that. It doesn't actually say that in the functions. It's a very wide ambit that's now available to Callaghan Innovation to be involved in the allocation and administering of funding. And I do believe this sets up a confused picture for the role of CRIs vis-à-vis government agencies that deliver funding. And I do believe in time it could lead to confused lines of accountability. It could lead to conflict within the sector, and I simply don't believe that a particular part of the functions of Callaghan Innovation should be there. Mr Speaker, the other one that I do want to speak about is around the question of the Stakeholder Advisory Group, and I am staggered that this government still has in this legislation that the advisory group may be established. It is essential. We heard it from both Stephen Joyce and Nikki Kay about the importance of getting over the silos, of bringing people together from different parts of the research community. And yet, the body that would best do that in the form of the Stakeholder Advisory Group doesn't actually have to be established. And I just find that remarkable that the government is that lax about this. It's muddled, it's confused, and it's ad hoc, Mr Speaker. More to the point, there's a lot of discussion about money and dollars, and we can all go back into that. But one thing we do know is that this government told New Zealanders when they discontinued Labour's R&D tax credit that that money would find its way back into research. $315 million worth over 3 years. Well, that reality hasn't occurred. The government's broken that promise. It's been $100 million over 4 years, Mr Woodhouse, not $315 million over 3 years. Quite a big difference between those two figures, and that is a broken promise. But the broken promise that I want to mention in regard to research and science is about the pipeline of people who will actually be doing the research, the scientists who actually do the work. And in New Zealand, we can be proud of the scientists who've been produced from our tertiary institutions. But in this legislation, I see the government's willful neglect of science and scientists and the training of scientists coming home to roost. And the broken promise here is around the fact that nobody went to the people of New Zealand in 2011 and said, we will abolish allowances for postgraduate study. There wasn't one political party represented in this Parliament who went to the people of New Zealand and said, you know what, we don't think there should be allowances for postgraduate study. We think that they can fend for themselves. No party did that. Yet this national government came to this Parliament in the budget this year and abolished allowances for postgraduate research. And it's those researchers, Mr. Speaker, who will be the people who will work in Callaghan Innovation, who will be the people that will provide the scientific breakthroughs. And this government's sending a message to those people: if you haven't got the money in your pocket, if you don't come from a privileged background, forget it. Go overseas. And day after day, Mr. Speaker, I get letters and emails from people who are doing just that, who are saying we're giving up on New Zealand because there's no support for us to undertake postgraduate research. This kind of activity, Callaghan Innovation's core business, will only happen, Mr. Speaker, if we've got a pipeline of scientists coming through, training in our tertiary institutions, doing their postgraduate study, and then, as my colleague Dr Megan Wood said, undertaking postdoctoral research, except we've got rid of the support for that as well. So we've got rid of this government has got rid of the support for postgraduate allowances and also for postdoctoral research. It is stifling. It's shutting off the pipeline of people who are needed to contribute to something like Callaghan Innovation. So while on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we can support this bill because at the highest level the goals are the right one, there's no point in having a Callaghan Innovation if we don't have the scientists in New Zealand who will work there, if we don't support those scientists from right through from school to tertiary level. And again, remember, this is the government, Mr. Speaker, who got rid of science advisors in schools. That's right. So not only are they taking away the opportunity at the tertiary level, they're not even investing in science at the secondary level. And they moan and bemoan the lack of engineers and scientists, Mr. Speaker, but this is about a pipeline all the way from school through to work and there being job opportunities. And at the moment, Mr. Speaker, what this bill speaks of is one small part of the equation being dealt with, but the rest of it being forgotten about. And it's very hard to take seriously this government's commitment to research and science if that's all that they manage to do. And Mr. Speaker, this is not just an opposition politician saying this. We've heard in the last few days the deep concern from the scientific community in New Zealand about the kind of opportunities that this government is providing them. Here's just some of the words used by some of our senior scientists in the last few days about New Zealand's research and science system. It's falling to pieces. It's an embarrassment. It's a lottery. It's in crisis. These are the words of our scientists, many of whom are giving up on New Zealand. And the obvious conclusion, Mr. Speaker, is if those scientists feel that it is an embarrassment, our system, that it is in crisis, that it is a lottery, then they will leave New Zealand. And we've seen evidence of that right around the country. New Zealand suffers economically and it suffers socially when we lose these scientists. So I love the fact that we can stand in this Parliament and say we're going to do something about innovation in New Zealand. We're going to create a more coordinated approach. But the reality leaves that goal so far behind, Mr. Speaker, that it is an embarrassment. And our system is in crisis, and this government does need to step up to the mark. When Labor was in office, we said we will do the research and development tax credit because that will keep us competitive. That will keep us competitive with other countries. The national government comes in and says we don't like that and comes in with another ad hoc scheme that is clearly failing if the scientists of New Zealand are to be believed. Mr. Speaker, we need a far more coherent system of funding for science and research in New Zealand. We need to invest in the people who will make New Zealand work. And one of Sir Paul Callaghan's favourite phrases was about talking about New Zealand as a place where talent wants to live. He understood it's the people, Mr. Speaker, it's the talent that will drive New Zealand science. The institutions like Callaghan Innovation will be helpful, but unless as a country we are prepared to invest in the people and the scientists, we simply will not live up to those goals. Mr Speaker, Labor is supporting this bill, but we do so knowing that we are a long way away with this national government from having adequate support for science and research in New Zealand.
I call the Honourable Member David Clendon.